Make sure to subscribe to our channel, join our Discord, and also follow us on Instagram so you always have the support that you need to really enhance your account and get yourself to the next level. Also, if you stick around until the end of the video, I'm going to show you how you can save a lot of money when you make in-game purchases by getting some amazing cashbacks each time you purchase anything. Hello everyone and welcome to another video of the Sky channel. So we are very close to the end of the first Surreal Wetland that we participated in. And of course, as you can imagine, it was the first time doing it, so we had a lot of things that we had to learn during the wetland itself. And of course, now is a great time to start sharing them with you all. First off, luckily, we are the ones that have a little bit of an upper hand right now. There's about 3 days left and we do have the tree. And since in the wetland, the tree is the only thing that matters and we've eliminated all of the enemy camp from this tree zone, there's a good chance that we might actually end with the tree and hence secure the victory. Now let's start right at the beginning. So the first thing that of course we do is we try to analyze our allies and enemies' strength, right? That's something that I'm sure a lot of you do in trying to figure out, where do we stand and who should go against whom. But when it came to this particular island, we did all that, right? We checked the pangolin rankings, we checked the cave rankings, we checked the groundhog rankings, and all that stuff in order to try to assess, who's the strongest of the enemies and who's the strongest of the allies. And that analysis didn't mean much when it came to the actual practical island performance. Basically, all that analysis that you do doesn't normally tell you what's really going to happen when you are actually facing the enemies in the island. So a little bit of a key takeaway for everyone, don't always look at the pangolin, groundhog, and cave rankings and think that, this gives a very clear picture of who's stronger and who's not. The reality can really surprise you, and in our case, it did surprise, right? The ones we assumed were the weaker ones were much stronger than what we had anticipated. The ones that we assumed were stronger might not have been as strong as we had expected them to be. But it comes to the point that, if you can't use that, how do you even know how strong the enemies are? And in my opinion, one of the best ways to go about it is by asking other alliances that had them as either enemies or allies in a previous island. That, in my opinion, is the closest you can get to the actual performance that you might actually see during the island. So a good thing you can do is, if you're part of our Sky Discord, you can just share a screenshot of your matchmaking and ask people, hey, if you know any of these alliances, please reach out to me in DM. And that way, perhaps somebody can actually give you their inputs on some of your allies or enemies. So that's the closest you can get to an accurate representation. It won't be 100%. Sometimes, people recruit between islands too, but it's going to give you a much better performance metric as opposed to, pangolin, because some alliances really focus on pangolins. Their pangolin scores might be higher and PvE metrics might be higher. Cave rankings too. Sometimes it's the big whales that are not very active that have highest cave scores. So, best you go ahead and ask people and try to get their inputs on which alliances are the most active. In our particular case, by the way, if you were to ask me who was the strongest, I'd really ask you, it depends on which day. Right? Because there's no clear winner that, this alliance is way stronger than the others. And that was really good for us because a lot of the times we were either stuck in situations where there was a huge power imbalance, right? Like once our camp was Sky, DMC, which is now Tor, and LOB, right? And compared to them, we aren't that big, right? So we were the small ones in that island. And then there were other islands where we were the big ones, right? Our whales were like the big whales of the island and they could make a lot of impact just by themselves. But in this particular island, I think there was a much closer match, right? And it all came down to how many people any alliance got on a particular day. I guess it also mattered how many whales they got online on that specific war. But you know what? Every alliance had whales, and some of the whales in our enemy camp were pretty close to our Sky whale level as well. In other words, the key to victory, which should be pretty obvious to a lot of people, is always getting enough people online for wars. And I'm going to take that as a perfect segue because there were times when we were in certain situations where we did need a ton of activity for us to be able to pull things off. For example, we had gotten this tunnel and then right before our protection, we built this baby tower over here. But the enemy was smart, right? They were like, we're not going to let Sky come into this clash zone. This was actually the enemy's clash zone. So what they did was they built all the way there and they covered the whole baby tower with their own towers, right? So now this baby tower was over here. It gave literally zero space because it was pretty much surrounded by enemy towers. And I know I said all the enemies were fairly close. I'd say this was probably the strongest of the enemies that had simply surrounded our tower. So now we knew that at reset, the war is going to start. We're going to have no space. They're going to have their strongest players that are teleporting right next to this tower, and they're going to keep filling the tower up. And remember, they just have to get the durability to 0 and boom, right? We're going to be out of this clash, and then they're going to take the tunnel, and then they're going to make sure to tunnel block us, right? Blocking a tunnel is very easy, right? You just build a few towers over here, and then every 30 minutes, let's say if Sky got the tunnel, they just block us for 30 minutes, and then they'll just take the tunnel. And it's really hard for you to defend a tunnel when the enemy is rallying it. So in a war like this, it was quite challenging, right? We had allies that were already inside and they could come and help, but the thing is, number one, they would definitely be ignored until the Sky Tower was destroyed, right? So even if they were able to reach all the way through, the priority would remain destroying the Sky Tower before doing anything else. So it was a pretty messy situation. The enemy had a lot more influence than us as well, so a lot more buffs. They had the Wonder, so free teleport. And if you can look here, we would have very poor march times, right? There's this mountain first thing that's blocking our way, and then there's a river as well. So you got to be pretty far away for you to actually send support to this tower. And note that Sky is an alliance of 78 members during this island. Now, we were successfully able to get more than 50 players online for this war, and that included all our whales, right? Ukron was up. It was 2 o'clock in the morning for him. You'd probably be wondering how he woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning and stayed throughout the war. Perhaps his R5 called him and woke him up at this particular time. And perhaps the R5 did it with a few other whales as well, and I'm sure they might not be too happy about it. But you know what? Having 50 plus members online at this particular time for a completely international alliance, right? We have people from Brazil, we have people from Taiwan, we have people from Europe, Russia, Ukraine, US, pretty much all over the world, right? And having 50 plus members was pretty cool for me, right? As the R5, I was shocked as well. I was like, wait a minute, you guys woke up at like 3 a.m. for this? That's really nice of you. But it also meant that we had a lot of firepower and we were able to save our tower and also destroy all the enemy towers that were blocking us, that had completely surrounded us. And the reason I'm sharing all this isn't just to brag about the fact that, we got like 50 plus members online despite being an international alliance and whatnot. The real reason was because this had me really start to think on what I really did to get like 50 plus members online on a specific war. Because I really wanted to do it again. I was like, if we can do this every single important war, we're gonna win big, right? I mean, I know there might be alliances out there that get like 80 plus members, but in this particular island, getting 50 plus members was pretty much higher than anyone else, right? So it was a big deal. And then I also had other people from the island, from this island of ours, ask how I was able to convince so many people to get online, because they were like, the island is pretty stressful because of all the hunting infected and all that stuff. The motivation is pretty low. How do you manage that? And eventually I realized what happened. And that's exactly why I brought this whole story up, is because I wanted to share how I was able to pull it off so that you can do the same. But don't do it if you're fighting Sky, right? I mean, don't use my own tactics against me. That's not very nice. But here's what happened. I want you to think of yourself as a member of any particular alliance, right? Now, there's a war at reset, and now you see a mail come through, and I want you to just think about how you'd react when you see this mail. The first one, war at reset, be there, full stop. That's it. That's what the mail is. How would you react to that? You'd be like, okay, yeah, that's good to know, great. Perhaps I'll be there, or if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you might not really remember to be up to set the alarm, and you probably won't wake up, right? The R5 just sent you a mail saying that there's a war. They didn't give you any additional context, but it's 3 a.m. in the morning. Why should I wake up? So that's one. Now let's go to example number 2. War at reset. I expect everyone to be there. If they're not, I'm going to demote them and I'm going to kick them out of the alliance after the island, because this is an important war and I expect everyone to be there. Now, if you are reading that mail, you're probably going to be like, wait a minute. You're going to kick out like anyone who doesn't join? Yeah, right. And probably you're going to get a little pissed at your R5 and you might intentionally not show up, right? So threats might be nice in certain situations, but they're not really going to get you what you're looking for. Now we're going to go to example number 3, and this is the one that I used. And now I want you to hear it out and try to see why it would make people feel more motivated to wake up at 2 or 3 a.m. and actually join in the fight and help us win. Okay. So at Reset, we have a war against one of the strongest enemies of the enemy camp. But that war is for a very important tower. If this tower falls, we are going to be locked outside of the clash zone, and our allies are going to be stuck in a 3 versus 2 situation while the enemies keep us locked at the tunnel. The enemy has all of the advantages. They have more influence than us. They have the wonder and hence free teleport. Our tower gives us no space and they're going to be teleported right next to the tower with negligible march times while we're going to have huge delays due to very long march times. But if we win tomorrow, we're going to be remembered as heroes because nobody expects us to win. Now when you hear this message, my assumption is that even if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you may just want to wake up just to see how the war is going, right? And interestingly enough, there were some people who woke up and asked them, oh, you're up. And they're like, yeah, the way you hyped it up, I actually wanted to see if you're able to pull it off or not, right? So just the fact that they're curious to know what's going to happen is good enough to wake them up. Right? So making them feel like, if we win this, you're going to be heroes, you're fighting against all odds and all that stuff just hypes people up a little bit and tries to get them more excited to join a war, right? As opposed to just informing them there's a war. There's a war pretty much every day, right? You hype it up and there's a good chance that people might actually start showing up. So that's a takeaway for you. The second thing is, it's one thing to communicate via mail, but your members might be elsewhere, right? Sometimes they might be more active on Discord or Telegram. So I also sent the same mail on Discord, and of course I tagged everyone, and then I sent the same mail on Telegram, tagging everyone as well. Because you can have a great mail, but if people don't read it, they're not going to know. So it kind of defeats the purpose. The other thing I did was that I released a calendar invite, right? If you do this, it sends a notification to everyone. And in case they miss it everywhere else, you can add certain details in that calendar invite so they'll know for sure that, hey, it's at this particular time and this is a tower that we have to defend or this is the tower we have to attack. So ensuring that it is properly communicated and ensuring that you actually hype up the war a little bit would help you get more activity for important wars. I wouldn't want you to use this in every single war. You hype up every single fight every single day and then people are just going to lose value in your messages. Keep it for the most important fights, right? And there are always going to be a few very important fights and the rest of them are just going to be going along with the momentum, right? You do not need 50 plus of your 78 members to be online every single day at a specific time, right? Sometimes it might be important for specific crucial activities, but other times you can let them wake up when they want, right? You don't expect people to be waking up at 3 a.m. every day because you're hyping up the fight every day. They have their lives as well, and you can't just imagine that they're gonna sacrifice every single day for the objectives in the game. Okay, so that covers another important thing that I wanted to share with everyone. Another important thing that I want to share. When you start seeing your camp as one alliance, you can take things really far. If you look at the bottom clash, you'll notice there's Sky and BLS that worked together in the bottom clash, and in most of the main fights, you could see that Sky and BLS were pretty much hand in hand, right? There were Sky towers and BLS towers, and what I made sure every single time was that the specific towers that can be considered the war towers are always touching the ally, right? So Sky towers were touching BLS towers and BLS towers were touching Sky towers in the particular war tower. That means that in the front line, the specific tower that's touching the enemy tower is also going to be touching the ally tower. And that means that even if, let's say, BLS or Sky had a very low activity day and their enemy had more activity, no matter what they do, they cannot ignore one ally and focus focus on the other, right? If they start attacking the BLS tower, Sky can defend it. If they start attacking the Sky tower, BLS can defend it. Additionally, if they're focusing on BLS, Sky can break their tower. If they're focusing on Sky, BLS can break their tower. So making sure that your allies are working as one unit can actually guarantee that not only do you win the battles, it's actually pretty demotivating for the enemy as well, right? They will probably not be able to destroy a single tower of the enemy, and that kind of sucks for them, right? So use your allies strategically, right? A lot of times people say, hey, you know what, we should split up. You go here and you face this alliance because you know what, we checked the Pango and scores and they're kind of weak compared to everyone else. Well, you know what, they might surprise you and you might have just set up one of your allies to fail. As long as you work together as a team and are able to make sure that none of your allies are set up for failure, you'll go really far. And you don't always have to build towers together. That's expensive in terms of clay, sure. But you know what? You can make sure that if for any reason one of your allies is losing a tower, you're close by so that they don't actually lose the tower. Because, you know, if you are defeating the enemy and you're pretty happy that, you know, I've defeated the enemy that was assigned to me, so what if the other two are losing against their assigned enemies? I've done my job. What do you think those two enemies are going to do after they've defeated your allies and pushed them back? They're going to come to you and then eventually you'll lose. So might as well just think forward a little bit and be there in a way that you can always support your allies because they are the key to your victory. In our particular island, you can probably see that Sky got the tree. One of our allies, BLS, they actually insisted that we do get the tree. And there's a really cool story behind it, and I think I want to share it with everyone. So one of our other allies insisted that they wanted to get the wonder in the second clash zone, right? So the enemy's clash zone. And BLS leadership was like, you know, we all worked really hard for this wonder, like everyone came in together, and we were sort of hoping that we could get it too. But you know what? I'll deal with my team, and we'll be okay with it so long as Sky gets the tree. And that kind of shocked me a little bit because I was like, wait a minute, you said that your team wanted the wonder, but it's okay as long as Sky gets the tree. Like, how does that make sense? And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Selflessness is supposed to be one of our core values in Sky. There's no way I'm letting BLS be more selfless than us. And I was like, no way, you know what? Sky doesn't want the tree. BLS gets the tree. And BLS was like, nope, Sky gets the tree. And then, you know, we're like, no, you. And then, you know, back and forth, like, no, you, no, Sky, we're not going to take it, you take it. And then, you know, it's like, okay, fine, you know, if you take the tree, then you're going to take all of these structures in the tree zone because Sky doesn't want them. And eventually we kind of refused to take some of the structures, right? And they were like, well, if you don't take it, then we'll let the enemy keep it, right? And they meant what they said. They actually really wanted us to get that structure. And it was interesting because we were fighting not for like getting structures, but rather fighting to make sure that the ally gets more structures. And I absolutely loved it. You know, the thing that you need to realize is that nobody's going to remember who had the tree. Nobody's going to remember who had the wonders. Nobody is going to remember your alliance influence. Nobody's going to remember the kills. And I'll go as far as just saying that nobody is even going to remember if you won or lost the island. But you know what's one thing that people won't forget? It's how you made them feel. And I can tell you that if I could choose one alliance that I can guarantee to have as allies in the next island that I go to, I'd pick BLS because they were such a pleasure to work with. When you have allies like that who are clearly looking out for your best interests, it really does take a lot of stress out of your mind. Right? Because a lot of times, perhaps I've seen camps crumble because everyone is like just fighting over, hey, who gets what structure and, you know, being greedy about it and all of that stuff. But in this case, BLS set such an amazing example that I was sort of forced to follow. Like, you know, how could I not? We have clear set of core values and selflessness is one of them. And if BLS is doing it really well, I should be displaying the same level of selflessness at least, right? So amazing allies, you know, I can just tell you that if you get BLS as an ally, you are lucky because the amount of selflessness that I saw in this island coming from them, I was impressed. Anytime we needed them, they would sacrifice all their clay to come to that specific point without worrying about, hey, you know what, if I use this clay here, it means that I'm not going to be able to get all of these other buildings and hence more buffs or more influence. They don't care. They're like, you know what, you need us, we'll be there. Lots of great things to say about BLS. They really are a cool alliance. Okay, so that's a little bit about these overall tips, right? Let's get a little bit more specific into tips and strategies for the Surreal Wetland. Now, at least in the first run of the wetland, the infected were actually pretty annoying. So they were extremely costly to fight, right? So they cost a lot of resources. I'm actually almost out of my honeydew, and I've never been in this situation before. I know people that are almost out of meat, and that's even more surprising. And they've never been in that situation before either. Speed ups as well. A lot of people might be running low on speed ups. And the thing was that the infected, they fight really hard. And they had reasonably high stats, right? There were bosses that were coming through, and bosses were like mini whales, and they actually hit hard. And the thing about infected was that they don't actually stop until the supply runs out, right? Or of course, if you take the structure before the supply runs out. And that basically means that they're going to keep rallying you 24/7. As long as you're in a supplied area, they will not stop. You know how as humans we take a break sometimes, or maybe you just went offline for a few minutes? That's not going to happen with the infected. They will continue rallying, 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 rallying. One rally completes, second one starts, one rally completes, second one starts. And for the most part, they're going to have very low march times because these are technically their initial areas, so they can pretty much teleport anywhere. And even if you are pretty strong, like let's say a big whale like Ukron, right? Sooner or later, they're going to have enough rallies that are hitting that even he is going to start feeling the pain of it, right? You cannot just tank infinite infecteds. They'll eventually kick him out. And you know what? In many of the structures, like especially level 8 residences, the supply drains really slow, right? It was taking about 16 hours to drain the supply of a level 8 residence. 16 hours is a long time. And imagine 16 consecutive hours of fighting, right? Non-stop, getting removed from the tower, going back in, getting removed, going back in. That's a very, very expensive war. And that's for one residence. Imagine if you did that for a lot of different residences, right? Your players are bound to run out of resources. And the resources, sure, they come back at an 80% rate, but speed ups don't. And a lot of people, when they were starting to run low on honeydew, the most obvious choice for them was to start using T10 normal instead of T10 enhanced. And guess where that hurts? Yep, your speed ups, which won't come back. Now, during the island, they realized that, you know what, that is pretty messy. And they made certain adjustments. Well, one thing is that they made an adjustment that the infected are not going to be that fast at completing rallies and all that stuff. And then they started giving us certain buffs. So there's like infected supply levels. The levels don't mean much other than the fact that it just differentiates the different infected, because the strength of the infected generally comes from the area that you're in and perhaps the level of the structure and of course the type. So residence always is stronger than layers, wonder is stronger than the residence. But at certain milestones, the supply level 1 areas, you get 1200% attack, defense, and 300% health bonus against the infected in supply level 1. That's the first one that you get. Then shortly after, you get it for supply level 2, and then in the end, you get it for supply level 3 as well. But you'd be surprised that even with these buffs, the infected can actually drain you pretty bad, right? You'd think that, hey, you know what, I got 1200 more stats, and so I should just be winning easy. Not really. They can still drain you quite a bit because the supply still goes down slowly and they are going to keep attacking and attacking. But of course, it helps a lot, right? You do lose a lot less, but it isn't like you can just, jump in there and just take the structure because, well, that's a huge buff. Well, no, they can still resist and they can still give you a tough time unless you show up in large numbers, right? So a team of 5 to 6 people, even with these huge buffs, won't be able to pull it off. Yeah, if you get enough online, you can pull it off fairly easily, especially with the buffs. Things did seem to change once you got through the third one. It actually reduced the difficulty of all infected ants. And what that means is that before we were talking about your own buffs, this actually gives the infected a debuff, making them much easier to deal with because now they actually have much lower stats and you have those higher stats, and all of a sudden things get way easier. So what's the best way to deal with the infected? Well, there are certain structures where the infected can actually defend themselves by building towers and actually intercepting you as well. and there are others where they probably won't care enough to do so. A layer like this, a level 4 layer, I don't think the infected is going to really care to build towers to defend this. And as you can see, it isn't completely surrounded by infected towers. What that means is that I could simply just build towards here and touch the layer, and of course by the time I do touch the layer, they're gonna start fighting. But just hold up in that fight, complete the tower, and then the best thing to do is to just take that layer. Don't wait for the supply to go down to 0. That is inefficient. It's going to cost you a lot of resources. And the best thing for you to do is for you to get the layer before you make them use all of their supply, because while they're using the supply, so are you using resources to heal your ants during that fight. Now, in a situation where the infected has completely surrounded the structure with towers, a strategy that you can use is try to get a lot of people online at the same time and have them break the towers so you can get direct access to the structure, and then of course try to get the structure before the supply drains out. This can be done easily as long as you have enough people online with enough strength online as well. So the logic, similar, try not to drain the supply all the way through, try to snipe it before the supply goes out. Now in this particular case that I'm showing you, you'll notice that it isn't completely surrounded. There is a little bit of a passage that you can use to get direct access to the layer without actually breaking an infected tower. This is always the best path to go, because breaking an infected tower is actually quite difficult unless you have a very high activity, because they are relentless. They will continue rallying it non-stop and try to defend it, and there's going to be bosses that are going to show up, and you can imagine their march times to save their own tower is very low. If you have the opportunity to skip it completely, of course, it's something worth doing. But as you can imagine, in high-level structures, and perhaps even in this particular case, what the infected is going to do is that they'll completely block the path as soon as they see you coming through. However, there are a few things you can do to prevent it. For one thing, the infected will never zero hills. So if you have free teleport, you can teleport here, and that guarantees that the tower that they might place will never be placed in the place where you are actually standing on. Additionally, you can cover some of the places by occupying them and sending your marches there. The infected will never actually attack those marches, so it completely blocks that spot. You can use a similar strategy when you're about to place an X tower anywhere else. If you want to make sure that the infected can't teleport too close to the place where you're about to build that tower, just send a few marches around that tower, so then the infected have to be actually far away, and then their rallies are going to take longer to complete. So if you get enough of your people online and you can cover up this whole place, you can guarantee that the infected will not be able to build a tower that completely blocks this path. Right? If you already have hills or marches that are blocking the route, they will not attack those marches, and hence they will not build a tower where they want to cover up this opening. Now you could say that they could do this. Sure, they could, but generally they're not smart enough to think like that. They may just skip the whole covering up thing altogether. Another important thing to note is that the infected do not start defending a structure until the first attack arrives at that structure. This should give you a pretty nice hint on what to do. Right? If the infected do not start defending their structure until a first attack arrives, and of course after the first attack arrives, it's going to take them a few minutes to actually start defending the structure. That means that if you can have, let's say, 20 to 30 rallies arriving at the same time or within about 2 minutes of each other, all of those rallies are going to be completed successfully without any defense from the infected. In other words, if it's a low durability structure, you might have successfully gotten the structure by the time the infected realize that, we're under attack, and they even try to defend it. For high level structures, if you get enough rallies going, you can even get like 70 to 80% of it within the first set of rallies. So definitely something worth doing. And the best way to make sure of it is by a process called timed rallies. And how that works and how I organize it. Let's say I want timed rallies on this tunnel. Now, right now it's protection time, so you won't actually be able to see it. And besides, I have the structure anyway. But what I'd do is that I would go here and then I'd see how much time it takes to march to this structure. let's say that from this particular point, it takes exactly 2 minutes to reach the tunnel. So what I do is that if I want everyone to reach the tunnel at exactly 00 UTC, I'm going to mark this one as 23:53 UTC. And what that means is that whoever is sitting at this particular point at 23:53 UTC, they're going to open up 4 rallies. And how they make sure that the 4 rallies arrive exactly at 00 UTC? Well, it is because I asked them to open the rallies in a way that they actually uncheck the box which says depart once steam is full. They rally, they choose 5 minutes, they confirm, and then they choose the unit, and then they click confirm again. Right? So now this rally will not complete before 5 minutes. Even if you have full 4 members, the rally will continue to remain for the full 5 minutes, and then it's going to start marching. So if you go back to the tunnel example, if my march time to the tunnel is 2 minutes and I'm doing a 5-minute rally and I'm opening it at 53, that means 53 plus 5 minutes, which is 58. So 23:58 is when the 4 units that are set to march will start marching. And since the march time is 2 minutes, all 4 of those rallies are going to arrive at 00 UTC exactly. Do the same example but in multiple locations. Let's say over here, the march time is, for example, 4 minutes, right? So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to mark this as 23:51 UTC. And what that means is that at 23:51 UTC, whoever is over here is going to open 4 rallies with the exact same logic. They're going to uncheck that box and make 5-minute rallies. So at 23:56 UTC, all 4 of those rallies are going to start marching. And since it's a 4-minute march time, they're going to reach exactly 00 UTC. If that makes sense, you know exactly how to do it. Just go around to the different places, mark it with a specific time, and you can mention rally 4 units. And of course, make sure and remind everyone to uncheck that box so that it doesn't start marching before that specific time, just because let's say the rally got full, but rather it waits for the full 5 minutes before it starts marching. And if you were to have enough people around that do exactly that, all of the rallies are going to reach at exactly 00 UTC. So 4 from here, 4 from here, 4 from here, 4 from here, 4 from here. You can have like 20, 30, 40 rallies arriving at exactly the same time, despite not all of them being close to the tunnel, right? Somebody from here can actually rally as well. Just make sure that they have enough buffer time so they start a little bit earlier than everyone else to make sure that it reaches at the exact same spot. And when it comes to timed rallies, you don't really need to fill the rallies for them to be effective. Be it full or be it empty, they're all going to arrive at the exact same time. So unlike how other places people are like, hey, fill the existing rallies before starting new ones, in timed rallies, that's not the case. You know what? Even if every rally has like 3 people in it and everyone arrives at the exact same time, that's still going to have the similar impact. Okay, so we covered the fact that you can cover up some of those locations with your hills and marches just to make sure that the infected can't block that area and you're able to get through. And then you can use timed rallies to make sure that you actually destroy a large portion of their structure before they even consider defending that structure. And then at that point, a lot of times they actually defend really strongly. So if you have like 50 of the infected inside and you feel like, these regular rallies are not working because, we kick them out, and by the time the next rally reaches, the infected are back inside, you can consider another round of timed rallies. And why that's really effective is because if 50 out of 50 of the infected are camping in that layer and you have 40 rallies that arrive at the same time, you are definitely kicking out all of those 50 infected that were camping inside, plus any extras that were not used to kick out the infected will be used to hit durability. The only problem, of course, is that you have a little bit of a time crunch. You do have infected that are going to be attacking your tower, so try to have one whale that's defending your tower while the infected continue attacking it. Finally, there's actually a pretty cool thing that has been released with the Surreal Wetland. It's called the Leader Privilege. There's the camp mail that's always been there, but there's the ability to demolish camp towers instantly if you're the camp leader. So as a camp leader, I can demolish allied towers instantly. I can't demolish my own towers instantly for my own sky towers. It has to go through the full 15 minutes waiting time, but allies towers, we can delete them instantly. But the really cool thing is the camp, discard, tunnel, and ferry. Same thing like towers, we can't use it on our own. We have to follow the standard 15-minute process for our own ones. But if an ally has a tunnel or a ferry, as a camp leader, I can instantly make that neutral. And why that's really cool is because, TBC utilized this trick to ensure that one doesn't get into a clash. So one would start attacking the TBC tunnel and they'd get it to, let's say, 20% durability. And then I would just instantly make that tunnel neutral. And what that means is now TBC could attack it too. And at that time, TBC could actually teleport right next to the tunnels, while one would be all the way over here. So they had like longer march times. And what would happen is TBC would open like 8 rallies, complete it much faster than one because they'd time it in a way to make sure that that happens, and they'd get the tunnel back. So despite one trying several times, the same stuff would happen each time. They'd drain durability off the tunnel, and once it gets low enough, I'd make that tunnel neutral, and then TBC would do a few quick rallies to that tunnel with, of course, their lower march times, and they'd generally be able to successfully get it before one. So that's a little bit of a hack, you can say, that has been introduced due to the new camp leader powers. Instead of waiting the 15 minutes, it's instant, and that can be used in very strategic ways. And that actually makes the tunnel blocks so much more effective. You can make the enemy drain so much of their stamina, attacking durability, and then, take the tunnel, and boom, there's a 30-minute shield. The enemy is stuck. They can't really attack you anymore because there's a shield that's protecting you. Plus, they wasted all their stamina for nothing. Okay, a final thing, the wonders in the South Clash. That was one of the first wonders that we were going for. And the thing is that the infected at that time, they were relentless. You even come close to their wonder sub-area, they'd build towers towards you. And by the way, they always start their towers at 30%, so they complete way faster than any of us can. They'd intercept you, they'd block you. Even if you're trying to leave the wonder sub-area at that point, they won't let you leave. They'll block you and they'll break your towers, right? And at that time, all of these debuffs and buffs weren't applied to us, so they actually hit really hard. So if you don't have any buffs and you're thinking about, going towards any structure and going through the wonder sub area, think twice. You will get intercepted by the infected and they will fight you really hard. So until you get those buffs, it might be best to completely avoid the wonder sub area while you are trying to capture structures, and only after you get the buff, perhaps, is a good time for you to go after the wonder. We actually got it before the buff came out, but at that time I don't think we even knew that a buff was coming out to begin with. So overall, a lot of learnings from the island. And I know I went on for a long time, and I think there's a lot of other things that I learned that completely skipped my mind because it's like 4 a.m. in the morning. But I hope some of these were helpful for you, and I hope you learned something that you can implement when you are in the wetland or any island that you think you might be able to apply these learnings to. Of course, I would love to thank BLS, TBC, One, LIL, and KTA. KTA fights like wolves, big numbers and strong players. One has so many big whales and they fight really hard, and the alliance overall strength seems pretty strong. LIL, or I guess Lil, has a bunch of strong players as well, and they can show up in pretty large numbers too. So overall the enemies were pretty nice, pretty strong, and pretty well established. And then when it comes to our allies, TBC, really good strategies. Some of these strategies that I'm sharing now were used by TBC, and they actually showed it in action, so that's pretty nice. And of course, BLS. I've talked about them enough for you to know that they were absolutely wonderful allies and a pleasure to work with. And of course, since I have you here, I want to remind you that you can get between 10 to 35% bonus on all in-game purchases in the Ants Underground Kingdom. The steps are quite simple. All you need to do is follow the video that I'm linking to this video, and you can also click that button that's going to appear at the top right of your screen to go to that video. The latest promo code is going to be in the name of that video, so you will know which promo code to use to get these amazing bonuses. And as the promo code changes, I'll update the title of that video. A lot of other people are taking advantage of this. Feel free to check it out. If you have any questions, you can join our Discord and I can guide you through the process as well. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please like it. Please subscribe to our channel. Let me know if you have any questions or about any strategies that were shared, or perhaps if you want to share any additional strategies that I didn't share because I was too sleepy to remember it. Please let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.